Jennifer, Niigaan, thanks to you both for joining us. Niigaan, as we've been reporting another terrible tragedy this morning in Laewetz First Nation, your thoughts on what we're hearing?
Well, I wish that people cared and had as much reaction to these kinds of moments as they do to be proactive and to be, this is not an issue that takes place overnight. This is an issue that's taken place for years of chronic underfunding, trauma, and then a lack of mental health supports within communities. And my phone blew up this morning because everybody wants to know the reaction. Everybody wants to send their hopes and prayers. But the fact is that we need to be dealing with these issues for years beforehand to be engaging the critical issues that lead to these kinds of situations. So I send all my wishes to those in Laewetz. My family comes from Manitoba, which is the same community. We're Samards, and so I send my great thoughts, and certainly I'll be making a lot of phone calls tonight to figuring out who's been impacted most by this.
Jennifer, you work closely with James Smith Cree Nation. Today is the 3rd anniversary of the mass stabbings there. It must be an extraordinarily difficult day there today too.
Yeah, it's especially with the news coming out today, I don't know how the community is processing this news because it's all happening so quickly and it's been, across social media for the last couple of hours. I know the chief, it's one of those things, exactly what Niigaan said, like there's still a lot of areas that are chronically underfunded and areas that we need to address and we need to fix, and we need the federal government and the provincial government support in these areas, everything from child welfare, addiction, poverty, all of those things. But it just seems like the tires are continuing to spin when it comes to how we engage with the provinces and the feds, where it just doesn't seem like they understand. I will say that it is a positive time for James Smith right now with going into the powwow, but it's going to be, a very tough day for a lot of people. And I'm sending all of my thoughts and my prayers, as cliche and very surface level as that sounds, because as Indigenous people, all we can really do is continue to process what's happened and continue to advocate for better solutions and better outcomes from the federal government.
Niigaan, of course, we don't know all the details here yet, but the Assembly of First Nations is expecting to be discussing a resolution on public safety and policing substance use and the drug crisis this week. The resolution's calling for a First Nations-wide state of emergency right across the country to be called. Do you think that could have an impact on the violence and drug use, trafficking that we're seeing nonstop?
Well, I mean, what else can be done? When you call it a state of emergency in 640 plus communities, you have to take attention. The rest of the country has to stand up and say, well, what's going on? And the fact is that there is this chronic issue of the lack of justice on First Nations for many years. Those of us who were on reserve, we saw police once a week, maybe a few hours at a time. And so in many situations, we were also banned from having our own police and our own justice systems. And so, I mean, what else is there for First Nations to do than to call a state of emergency? And if we're going to be disallowed from having our own policing, our own justice systems, then I feel a great deal of empathy for leadership that they have to take these dire measures to be able to be direct with the Canadian government to say that this is enough already, because this isn't just impacting First Nations. This isn't just impacting Indigenous communities. This is impacting the entire justice system as a whole. It takes resources. It takes a great deal of care and concern, because many of our relatives who are suffering from mental health challenges that end up participating in some of these violent acts, then end up in the provincial healthcare system, end up in living in municipalities, and they end up engaging with police forces in places like cities. And so we have to really deal with this as a Canadian issue, because it was Canada that created this great immense amount of trauma, and the outcome of that is seen in terrible tragedies like today.
Jennifer, you kind of touched on this a bit, but thoughts on what more could be done to prevent another such tragedy?
I think, addressing the root cause, and I know that that's something we talk a lot about that, but there seems to be a lot of issues that we still cannot get through. And chronic underfunding is one of the biggest ones. We talk about child welfare, prevention, protection, addictions, mental health, but when the nations are struggling to get those resources on the ground and everything is so bureaucratic, it's really hard to not only create those systems, fund those systems well, and then maintain them long term. So I think there's still a lot of work ahead of us. I know, Bill C-92 is a start with reclaiming our jurisdiction over our children, because those broken systems are what lead to a lot of these issues, especially breakdown of family and the issues that it causes. I know it's had a ripple in my own family. So I think that's a place where we can start, is, continuing to do what we can. And then on our part, it's a lot of hard work. There's no truth to be watered down there. It's an incredible amount of work. We're going to require a lot of really good leadership right now. We're going to require a lot of people in our spaces that have the energy and the desire to actually want to fix these things.
Niigaan, moving on to the AFN AGA itself, this was hailed a few times that I've seen so far as the most important gathering of chiefs in a long time. That's often said, but do you think this is?
I mean, it's only the most important one till the next one. And then I'll just say that it is an important meeting. It's not to downplay, not certainly to make light of it. This is an important meeting, not because of the resolution that's going to come out, because the fact is that what chiefs will make a decision on will really not have a lot of impact nationally. It will perhaps impact the national chief and what she has to say. But when the projects of national interest come out, they will be then regionally focused, and they will be focused on particularly rights holders, individual First Nations that will then perhaps work in a collective, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 or 15 of them, to deal with the impacts of that national resource project. They will be the ones directly negotiating with business, with provinces. And so this is much more of a regional issue. What this meeting really is about networking and is about strategizing, and then also perhaps creating a unified approach to what will be a national set of projects. And if there's anything that we could look for, we might want to look to the failure of the child welfare reform package that was offered by the federal government, $47 billion that most First Nations, the majority of First Nations, rejected, but a set of regions, particularly in Ontario, did accept. And so that's kind of what happens at the AFN. It's regional decisions that are made usually through networks, through conversations, through meetings like this. And even though there is kind of a national decision that's made amongst chiefs, then they end up working regionally anyways. And so you'll see that happen with this project, but I'm not to downplay the fact that there's a whole lot of politicking going on. I was down at the convention center. I witnessed many of the meetings, and the most interesting conversations take place at lunchtime and in the breaks than really what's happening on the conference floor.
Jen, Bill C-5, the Building Canada Act, was a pretty big deal day one, and certainly will come up again. But pretty short on federal ministers this time around. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew spoke, but only Rebecca Alty, the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, was there, and only for a short period of time. Anything to read into that?
Yeah, I think it's a really contentious time right now, and also maybe the location, but the House isn't sitting this week. I know ministers are very busy, but it would have been nice to see, some more of the federal ministers there listening. I've heard nothing but more positive things regarding Wab Kinew showing up, so I think that's a good thing there. But I think, with Bill C-5 and what we're seeing, I would argue that this is one of the most important meetings that AFN has ever had. But I would say that it's definitely one of the more important ones in terms of where the conversation is going to go, especially when we're starting to see more and more nations going to these groups and these lobbying bodies, basically saying you aren't the rights holders, you are just there to represent our voice collectively. So I think it's going to set a tone for the national chief on where she goes from here.
Niigaan, anything else that sticks out for you so far, or that you'll be looking for at this AGA as it continues on here?
Well, we just talked in the first portion about First Nations policing. I think that's something that's coming. I think that's something that's the federal government wants to download that to First Nations. But by far the most interesting discussions are taking place around child welfare. There is a lot of politicking, particularly amongst the chiefs in BC, particularly amongst the chiefs in Manitoba, over the issue of accepting the child welfare package or trying to restart the negotiations with the federal government that frankly doesn't have a whole lot of interest in revisiting that child welfare package. There's a lot of pressure being put on to fulfill the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal mandates, the multiple orders that have been taken or ordered for the federal government to come back to the table. We'll see if that happens. I think Premier Kinew's arrival and the fact that he showed some solidarity with the AFN suggests that Manitoba might be that place in which that renegotiating might restart.
It was just our our reporter over there, Fraser Needham, just came back for a little break, and I said, looks like they're about 2 days behind schedule right now, and we're only on day 2, but they are quite a bit behind schedule. They're still supposed to talk about policing and child welfare for sure. Jen, anything that you'll be looking forward to or anything that stuck out so far?
Well, I saw Cindy Blackstock was on the agenda today, so I'm hoping to catch what she has to say. And then I'll be interested in just hearing a little bit more regarding child welfare and what the next steps are, because it seems like the last meeting that took place, everything kind of just stopped, and then there wasn't a lot of conversation from there. And then obviously with what's going on in the media right now regarding the nation of Manitoba, I'll be curious, what the Chiefs have to say this afternoon and where the direction goes.
Indeed. Jennifer, Niigaan, always great to see you. We'll leave it there.
Miigwech, thanks.
Thanks.